guys, it's Laura from How to Get Your Shit Together, and today I want to talk to you about how you can get the most from your to-do list. I think we all have to-do lists, whether they be on paper or whether you write them down digitally or whether you keep them just in your head, which I don't recommend, by the way. It's so easy to forget things when they're just floating around your head. But anyway, we all have to-do lists, and I want to share some tips with you about how you can supercharge your to-do list so that you can actually get more done. If you're interested, I have written a blog post on the digital app that I use for my to-do lists. So I'm going to link to that in the description box below. So please check that out if you're interested in how I write my to-do lists. And the reason I use a digital app is that I just find it very convenient for editing to-dos and moving them around. Sometimes I have to switch them to a different day or something like that. And I just find digitally that's much easier. So my tips then for supercharging your to-do list. The first tip is that you should batch your tasks together. So find tasks that are similar. So for example, if you have some phone calls to make, that you make all of those phone calls at the same time. The other example is for errands. If you have to leave the house to do something, try and get as much done while you're out of the house as possible. There's nothing worse than going out to the bank or something, then coming home and realizing that you have to go back out for milk or back out to the post office or something silly like that. That's doubling up on the time you're taking to accomplish things. Also, you should think about not necessarily how you can batch in one day, but how you can batch in a week. So again, if you have to go to the post office, but you know that tomorrow or later in the week you have to go to the supermarket, can you put off your trip to the post office? Again, another thing would be working in areas. So if you know you have to do something in the kitchen, for example, if you have to prepare a meal, what other things can you be doing in the kitchen at the same time? So try and gather all of your like tasks together and do them all together. The second tip is to multiply. So whereas batching means that you do lots of small tasks together, multiplying is doing lots of one thing. So the best example I can give you is that when you're cooking a meal, you make extras so that you have leftovers for meals later in the week. That should be a pretty obvious one that a lot of people can relate to, except me, because I am a terrible cook. A lot of my meals are takeaways or sandwiches or things like that. So, but if you are anyway competent in the kitchen, you should be making leftovers of things, particularly, stews, soups, casseroles, lasagnas, things like that. So multiplying means doing a lot of one thing, and that will save you time later in the week or later in the month or whatever. So cooking is a good one. Another good example is with laundry. If you're sorting clothes for a wash load, sort enough clothes to do 2 or 3 wash loads. So you can pop one on and then you know that the second and third loads are ready to go. And that will again save you a lot of time kind of later on. When you're doing one thing and you're kind of in the zone and you're working away on it, try and do more of it so that it will save you time later in the month. If you only do kind of the bare minimum right now, but you're really kind of motivated to get stuck in and you know that you'll have to do it again later in the week or later in the month, get as much of it done now as you can, and that will save you later in the month when maybe you don't feel as motivated or maybe you don't have the time to do it. So that will be a really good way that you can supercharge your to-do list to ensure that you are not only knocking the task off of your list for today, but also for the near future as well. Your future self will thank you for that one. The next tip then is dividing. So this means looking at your to-do list and seeing what you can cut back on or what you can do with minimal effort. I often struggle with this one because I am a perfectionist at heart and I'm all about attention to detail and doing things until they are perfect or to a certain very high standard. And I have struggled with that a lot, and it's something that I am continuously working on. So what I'm trying to tell myself now is that good enough is actually good enough. One example I would have for you is ironing. If you're ironing your clothes, I'm actually one of those people who, I won't say enjoys ironing, but doesn't mind it. I have no problem with ironing. I know a lot of people out there absolutely detest it, but I don't mind it. But one tip that you can do if you despise ironing, for example, with trousers, most trousers will only need to be ironed on one side. That's usually enough, unless they're incredibly wrinkled or they're linen trousers or something like that. Generally, doing one side, more than enough. That should help you out. So think about how the tasks that you're doing, how you can minimize them, how you can reduce the amount of effort. A really good tip here is, if again you're one of those people who despises ironing, if you hang your clothes in the bathroom while you're having a hot bath or a shower, that will actually help to steam the wrinkles out of them. You can tell your family you're going off to do the ironing and you can't be disturbed for an hour, and actually just go have a long hot soak in the tub while simultaneously ironing your clothes. So that's a good one as well. So the next time you go to tell your family that those clothes won't iron themselves, think, will they? Will they? If there's anything where you can reduce the amount of effort required, do that. If there is something that you can eliminate completely from your list, do that. But realize that everything doesn't have to be done to perfection. Again, I struggle with this. It's a constant battle for me, but I am working on it. The final tip I have for you then is multitasking. And this comes with a bit of a caveat. Multitasking is not something I normally recommend. I think you should focus on one thing at a time. And I think that if you're switching focus between two things or trying to focus on two things at once, you're not giving them your full attention. But multitasking is great if you do it in this way. If you pair active tasks with passive tasks. So an active task is something that requires some form of brain power, that requires some of your attention and some of your focus. So things like making phone calls or cooking a meal, things like that. Then passive tasks are things that don't really require much brain power or much attention from you at all. So those would be things like watching TV and listening to the radio or listening to an audiobook. They're great examples of passive tasks because they're things that don't really require much concentration or much effort on your part. So when you're multitasking, pair active tasks with passive tasks. So for example, you can fold clothes while you're watching TV. Some other passive tasks, and you will find that there are lots of them throughout your day, things that you kind of do on autopilot without really thinking or without really having to think. So things like maybe stirring if you're making a stew or a soup or something and you have to stir it. Try and think of an active task that you could be doing at the same time. So you could be making a phone call, or you could be reading another chapter of your book, or you could be maybe booking some flights online or doing some research online. Another really good example of this, and I see people do it all the time, is to listen to an audio book or a podcast while you're driving or traveling to work on your commute. And that's a great way to get stuff done. So they're really good examples of things that you can pair together. So just always make sure that one is active and one is passive. Now, it's important to note here that your passive task should be something that you actually want to get done. So there's no point in watching TV, for example, if you're just flicking through the channels and you're just mindlessly watching something. But it is a good idea if you want to catch up on a series and that is on your to-do list. So your passive tasks should really be to-dos, because that way, while you're pairing them with your active tasks, you're knocking two tasks off of your list instead of one. So I hope that proves helpful to some people out there, and it will definitely help you get your shit together and get more done and get more out of your day, and to really supercharge your to-do list. So if you like the video, please subscribe and please give it a thumbs up. I am back every week with new tips and tricks for how you can get your shit together. So subscribe and you won't miss out on those. Thanks a million for watching, guys. Bye.